Hi, welcome to my channel, Danette Gets Creative. I'm Danette. Here we are, part 6, final embellishments of the Scrappy doll series. Last week I added lace doilies and some pre-embroidered pieces that I cut off of old tablecloth doilies. This week I'm going to add some yo-yos. I am not fortunate enough to have any in my stash, so before the video I made some. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the yo-yo process, I'm going to show you. I don't know if this is the right way. This is the way my grandmother showed me many years ago, and it's the way that I've always made them. So I just cut out a circle. I didn't trace anything, but I'm sure in your space where you're working right now that there's lots of circles, and you could trace the shape and size that you want. And I'm just using sewing machine cotton, and I'm going around the edge, making that gathering stitch. So just around the edge, making the gathering stitch. At the end, you'll just pull it all together. There we go, pulled it all together. I'm just using my fingers to flatten it and shape it the way I want it. My grandmother always told me that it was best to iron them as well because it created them, nice creases and it made them flatter. But for the sake of this video and this project, I didn't pull out my iron. So I'm going to just take a moment to stitch this down. I've really enjoyed this journey. I hope you all have as well. When I started this series, I had no idea where I was going to go. No idea what the end product was going to look like. But I've had so much fun. For me, stitching is a stress reliever. It's a way of just letting the day go and, just being in the moment. I don't know if I've ever said that I am a grade 2 school teacher. So my days can be pretty hectic. So to come home and have a few minutes just to sit down and put a stitch in here or a stitch in there, it's a big part of my day to unwind and let those tense moments go. So here I am adding more of the yo-yos. I place things and I move things and I change things. I don't know if I'm just picky or what it is, but you'll see here that I go through all the colors and go through lots of spots and until I find that magic spot for me, I guess. So these videos were quite long and I ended up speeding them up and cutting some of the stuff out because it's been a lengthy process trying to find the things that make me happy in the spots where I want them. So I don't know if you're anything like me, the process will be a little bit lengthy. So have fun with it. Just be in the moment with it. For me, that's what's important, being in the moment with it. And at the end of it all, being happy with where it looks. So I'm just going to pin these down instead of you sitting there watching me sew it all down. Just find the last spots for these. Putting this one in the middle of the doily. I thought was kind of a fun touch. Just something different. A couple more to place down. Next week will be the interesting part on how to do the face and the hair. I've never done that step before, so I've been watching a few videos, kind of getting familiar with how other crafty ladies are doing it. And then I'm going to do the process that's easiest for me, so stick around so we can finish this doll up with a face and a hair. I end up using these beautiful buttons that I got for Christmas. My family gave them to me. They're just little wooden buttons, and they're so sweet. They have little polka dots on them. So I thought that they would be perfect for this project, given all the fun colors that's on her dress. I love using buttons. And if you've watched any of my other videos, I always end up in my button box. One of my many button boxes. I have lots of vintage buttons, and I just love the look and the feel and the way a button changes the project. So if you stick with me at all and you watch any videos, you're going to see I pull up buttons all the time. So just placing buttons around to add some interest, add some texture, just to give it, you know, a cute little touch. So we do the buttons. There we go. Knot it off. I end up putting a button in the middle of this one yo-yo. It was such a funny process. I think that I tried every single color combination and I ended up putting down the one that I originally started with. I guess that tells me that I just need to go with my gut and put down the first one I put down. Oops, bumped the camera there, sorry. I do need to apologize if you've noticed that my hands are coming out of the side of the video this week. I actually recorded my video in the vertical position, and then of course that leaves a bunch of black around, so I flipped it and now my hands are coming out the side. So if you can ignore the fact that my hands are coming out of the side and not the bottom, everything else is still the same. There we go. Now, what do I do here? Oh, still placing more buttons. Trying to figure out how many more buttons I want. I don't end up putting any of these down. It's such a funny process. In this part, I'm bringing in my beads. And I'm just showing you some of the things that I chose to do, just to give you some ideas on how you might want to add detail. These beads are actually just from my local dollar store, nothing crazy. And what I'm doing is I'm just adding them to the pre-existing embroidery that was already on there. Because if you remember from the beginning, I used a pillowcase that had that embroidery on there. That's a machine embroidered embellishment, not hand, unfortunately. But for me, I just wanted to add some extra detail. So these cute little shimmery beads, there you go, just add it to that flower. So I did that on both of the pink flowers, just to add that extra shine, shimmer, and dimension, of course. So I'm going to add it to the other pink flower that you'll see here in a moment. Just using what's already there. Just a tip that I do is once I've attached the bead, I'll do an extra stitch, just as kind of a security, a safety thing for me to know that it's hopefully going to stay on there well. So one through the bead and then an extra stitch. You could either go through the bead or you can just put an extra little tiny stitch beside the bead. It's just a way of knowing that it's extra secure, I guess. So I finish up. Oh yes, there's always one bead that's smaller than the other and won't fit on your needle. So I end up finishing up adding these pink beads. And then I'm going to move on to another section where I add a mixture of blue beads to kind of mask or hide one of those pieces of embroidery that I added on. I don't show everything in this video, but when you come back next week, if you come back next week, and I hope you do, before I do the face and the hair, I'll have some finished video of the dress and I'll show all the details. But around some of the embroidery sections, to kind of mask the embroidery, I use seed stitch just to kind of blend it and make those edges less obvious. So for this particular part by the embroidered D, by the monogram, please excuse my voice, I'm getting over a cold here, I guess. So around this monogram and around this blue extra embroidered piece that I added, I'm just going to outline the shape with these beads. So I have some light blue beads and some darker beads and just some iridescent white beads that I put around the edge to kind of hide it, make it blend more in with the project. That's just me. I mean, it looks fine the way it is, but for me, I just wanted to try to hide it and make it more of a one, like, one altogether versus it being a separate piece I added on. The lovely Corrine over at To Be Treasured, I think that's right. One of the ladies I watch, she is fantastic at doing seed stitch, and she uses it to blend her pieces all together. And that's where I actually learned how to kind of blend things. So you can see it just takes that edge off, and just a way of kind of making it more uniform and bringing it together. So that was Corrine over at To Be Treasured. She's fantastic. If you don't already know her, head on over. She is amazing. So here I am using the blanket stitch. Very first stitch my grandmother ever taught me was the blanket stitch. And I remember anything I could get my hands on after she taught me the blanket stitch, I would stitch with it. I would go over to my grandmother's on the weekends. She didn't live far from where I lived. And she would teach me all kinds of crafty things. And this one particular stitch has always been one of my go-to stitches. Just brings back some great memories. She's the same person who taught me how to make the yo-yos. So here I am, just adding that pop of color to the collar. It's a way of hiding that raw edge a little bit, masking it, making it a little more decorative. What you don't see in this video is I do go back and add a French knot at the end of all these little posts that are coming over the front. Just a way to give it a little more color. So again, as I mentioned, I'll do a little bit of a detailed video next week just to show you the final details up close before I do the eyes and the hair next week. I have some homework this week to finish off all the extra details. I'm sure I could stay busy all week doing it, but at some point I have to stop, right? We have to stop at some point. Not to say I can't pick it up again. So just knotting off my edge. Happy with the way that looks. Just gives it that little tiny bit of extra color, right? And it kind of defines the neck. There's the sleeves I put on last week. And then I will stitch it on her. Maybe put a button, some Velcro. Here's where I pull out my embroidery thread. This is a machine embroidered embellishment. But I found it had a couple of spots where I would like to add some extra detail. So what I'm using right now is 2 strands of a 6-stranded piece of embroidery floss. And what I'm doing is I'm just going in and adding some extra branches, some extra details, just to fill in this space. And I end up doing it in the top as well, but you won't see that in the video. You'll see that next week. You'll see it when it's finished. And I go in and I add some very simple little blue flowers. I add a few French knots just to fill the space up, just to give it a little more detail. I mean, it's beautiful the way it was, but I just wanted to add a little more. I ended up, as you can see, using a hoop, which is not something I tend to do, but the problem with this is I didn't want to stitch into the other part of the dress since it's kind of round and all bulky there. I felt that the hoop kept me a little more controlled, and I was not getting hooked up in stitching through other parts of the dress. So I'm just adding some extra little branches here. And then I'm just going to tuck this brown thread away off to the side for later. And I'm going to go in with some blue thread. Oh, you can tell it's later in the evening when my needle threader comes out. That's a sign that it's getting a little darker because I struggle to see the holes in the needle, the eyes in the needle at nighttime. So thank goodness for needle threaders. They have been a lifesaver. So just going to finish off the brown here. And I'm just going to tuck it off to the side underneath there. There we go, tuck it in. And I'm going to grab the blue, which is also two-stranded. I didn't want it to be too bulky, that's why I went down to 2 strands. And I'm just making a very simple flower here. Just straight stitches, 5 or 6 of them, sort of in a star shape. And then I do a few French knots just on the branches, not in the center of the actual flowers, just on the branches. I'm thinking I could come back in with beads and put beads in the center of the flowers like I did on the pink ones. But that's for another day. That's not for today. And maybe that's not even for another couple of weeks. Maybe I might pick it back up. Who knows? But you'll see here just a few flowers added, a couple of French knots. And then I move on and add a few pink French knots just to give it a little more color on the other side. There we go, French knots. And you'll see towards the end of this video where I've added some extra green fly stitch to help, there it is, to help mask the embroidery that I added. So I hope you are letting your creativity take you where it may. I hope you're enjoying the process. I would love to see finished dolls, so maybe you can send me a message on my Facebook page if you're a Facebook user. Danette Gets Creative is my Facebook page. Feel free to share your finished dolls there. I'd love to see them. So there's that spot I was mentioning with the green. Next week I will show you a finished video of all the details. Thanks for coming along. Have a great day. Take care. See you again soon. Bye.